recent report highlighted that the UK is not institutionally racist, but many people's lived experiences tell a different story, a story of racism in our schools and our workplaces. I'm a trainee doctor, and I want to focus today on our medical schools. In my view, racism in the NHS isn't just harming the people on the receiving end, but it is also harming the nation's health too. Did you know that 40% of medical undergraduates are from ethnic minority backgrounds? Medical schools are more diverse than they have ever been. And higher education institutes are placing more importance on diversity and making university more accessible to those who would not traditionally go on to obtain degrees. That means our future NHS workforce will be more diverse than ever. Yet, racism towards our medical students and doctors of ethnic minority backgrounds is still very common. A study by the British Medical Association and the British Medical Journal has highlighted that medical schools in the UK are not well prepared to deal with racism and racial harassment, which is experienced by medical students from ethnic minority backgrounds. And in a Freedom of Information request, it was found that only about half of medical schools collect data on racial harassment. In 2019, UK universities only recorded 560 complaints of racial harassment over 3.5 years, while 60,000 students said they made a complaint. For this reason, the British Medical Association launched a charter for medical schools to prevent and effectively deal with racism and racial harassment, as well as guidance for students. It is vital that our universities do not hide incidents of racism to protect their own image. Although higher education institutes and medical schools have been trying to tackle the issue of racism over the past year, much more needs to be done as racism is still very common. Now, if medical students are resigned to the likelihood that nothing will be done if they report racial incidents, they are likely not to bother. Instead, they tolerate and they internalize this humiliation, hoping it won't happen again. Student stories and statistics of racism should no longer be waved away as an aberration or as a minor part of some people's experiences. For many students of colour and for Muslim students, racism is a constant in their lives. It is woven into their entire journey to becoming a doctor, from worrying that the scarves on their heads will affect their likelihood of attaining a place at medical school, to worrying that patients on the wards will make a racist remark, to the constant fear that once they do graduate, their chances of progressing through their career is significantly lower than that of their English colleagues. Now, there are many forms of racism, but I want to focus on racism experienced by Muslim medical students today. My hijab-wearing friends often tell me about incidents of racism they experience on the wards. Most of the time, they feel that they cannot turn to anyone to report the racism as they believe nothing can be done about it, and they're so used to it that they just let it slide. I want to give a voice to their stories. It is important these stories are highlighted and we all acknowledge that racism happens in our hospitals. Unfortunately, a large proportion of white British people believe that the UK is not racist, while they themselves hold racist beliefs. To protect the identities of the victims, I will change their names. Amira is a hijab-wearing medical student. As part of her training, it is essential that she speaks to all kinds of patients, examines them, and learns how to treat them. Amira approaches a patient, introducing herself and gaining consent to ask a few questions. The patient says to Amira, "Take that ugly thing off your head." Amira remains professional and calm and continues with her questions. The patient does not want to listen and says, "I'm not going to tell you anything. Are there no English doctors around here? You're not even British." Amira tells the patient she is British and she was actually born in London. The patient continues to insist that Amira is not British and should go back to her own country if she wants to cover her hair. At this point, Amira realizes that continuing the conversation will only upset her as she already feels embarrassed. She excuses herself and tells the patient she will send a doctor to take the history. Feeling that no one will be able to help and being used to racist comments, Amira decides not to report the incident. However, she admits that it has lowered her self-esteem, and after this incident, she always feared the comments patients could potentially make about her headscarf. Unfortunately, Amira no longer wears a headscarf. She says patients take her a lot more seriously now. Sarah is a hijab-wearing medical student. Sarah wears a hijab and covers from head to toe. This includes when she's on placement. When she goes to see a patient with 2 English students, the patient says to Sarah that everyone is British except her. When Sarah tells the patient she is also British, the patient demands Sarah tells her what her real ethnicity is. Sarah tells the patient she's only there to take a history and that her ethnicity is not relevant. The patient tells Sarah she must be ashamed of admitting her true identity because it is where terrorists are from. Sarah feels out of place and she feels ashamed. She fights back tears, and although her colleagues appear shocked by the incident, they don't say anything. Sarah lets her colleagues take over and takes a step back. It's not the first time she has been called a terrorist, nor is it the first time that she has been made to feel like she doesn't belong, or that wearing a marker of her faith makes her unsafe. She has previously tried to cover up her Muslim identity by wearing a hoodie over her hijab, or trousers instead of loose-fitted dresses. Sarah soon realizes that even if she were to remove her headscarf, it wouldn't stop racist comments. She says no one should have to hide their faith in order to fit in or feel more accepted. On the way to the hospital, Adam was told to go back to his own country. Adam brushes this comment off and continues his commute. At the hospital, Adam heads upstairs to leave his belongings in the office. Before going to the ward, Adam asks the nurse if he could leave his bag and his coat in the office. The nurse responds with this: "As long as there is no bomb in there." Although Adam feels offended, he laughs the comment off. He heads to the ward to speak to the patient. He approaches the patient to take a history. Midway through the questions, the patient says to Adam, "Your English is really good for someone who is in English. How long have you been in this country?" Adam is familiar with this question and responds by telling the patient he was born in England, as were his parents. Although Adam understands the patient may have not intentionally tried to belittle him, he can't help but feel underestimated. 3 times in a day he was made to feel like he does not belong in the country he was born in. Although this doesn't happen every day, Adam admits it happens frequently enough for him to consider going to another country after he qualifies. These are just 3 stories in an ocean of anti-Muslim incidences. Muslim students are very familiar with questions that make them feel ostracized. From the "where are you really from?" to "go back to your own country" to "do your family force you to wear that headscarf?" For Muslim medical students, these comments hurt them. It offends them. It ruins their clinical experiences. It makes them feel that they don't belong in this country. Worryingly, 84% of BAME British people believe that the UK is still very or somewhat racist. No one wants to stay in a country where they are not made to feel welcome. Data shows that doctors and medical students from ethnic minority backgrounds are up to 3 times more likely to fail an exam than white students. Ethnic minority doctors are also less likely than white doctors to be shortlisted for and appointed to consultant posts, and they are more likely to be bullied and harassed than their white consultant counterparts. This phenomenon is called differential attainment. It appears at medical school and persists after qualification. While it is important to ensure that examinations are unbiased and curriculums inclusive, the evidence points to improving the learning experience for ethnic minority students as a target for action. For example, an international review found that minority medical students experience less supportive social and less positive learning environment and were subject to discrimination and racial harassment. Now, you might be wondering how this affects you and why you should even care. The current pandemic proves to all of us how important our NHS is. Our hospitals are short-staffed. Many of our current doctors working in the NHS are doctors of foreign nationals. If 40% of our medical students are of minority backgrounds, for the NHS to function, these medical students need to stay in the country after they graduate. And for that to happen, they need to feel like they belong here, supported and appreciated. We must give our bright medical students a positive learning experience. So what can you do? In the words of Desmond Tutu, if you are neutral in a situation of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor. Being silent in a situation of injustice means you approve. You might feel that you are actually avoiding conflict if you stay silent, but you could be sending out the wrong signal. Sarah felt her colleagues should have stepped in to tell the patient that it was not appropriate to speak in such a manner. Speaking out against racism might encourage others around you to do the same. And we know collective voices can bring about huge changes. Today it was Sarah, Amira and Adam. Tomorrow it could be you. If it happens to them, it can also happen to you. Injustice breaks all strata of moral threshold and creates room for more injustice to occur. If we fail to speak up, we are exposing our human rights to be trampled on in the future. In our society today, we have false assumptions about people of different races and religions. Where you see false assumptions, challenge it. Challenge it so that it stops the first time it happens and it is not repeated. Perhaps a person making a racist comment is making it because they do not know any better. Perhaps you could be the reason that they learn their assumptions are wrong. There are also psychological benefits to defending others. Speaking out is an act of humanity. It is our job to look out for one another. Standing in solidarity with those who are marginalized gives them a renewed sense of hope. It will also give you a sense of fulfillment. The humanity aspect aside, challenging racism has real health benefits. If we challenge racism, it is likely to occur less frequently. Less racist comments means a better learning experience for our medical students from minority backgrounds, better learning experience, and feeling more accepted in this country means we produce more skilled doctors who feel like they belong and view this country as their own. This means more doctors in the NHS and better quality of care for patients, and this means better health outcomes. If our system is set up so our minority group medical students win, you as a patient will receive better healthcare. It is in everyone's interest that these Muslim medical students are learning in an environment where they can reach their full potential. We are often witness to injustice that other people face, and most of the time we remain passive as we think it does not affect us. In a world plagued by injustice, to remain silent means to choke the goodness within yourself. So I would like to leave you with this. Speak out, educate, and improve the nation's health. When racism is no longer a block to a patient taking a doctor's advice, no longer a reason for qualified doctors to leave the country, we all benefit. Thank you so much for listening.